Something feels off about this station, Lisa muttered, drumming her fingers against the navigation console of the Astral Whisper. Her xenoarchaeologist partner, Vkr'lak, made the characteristic warbling sound that humans had learned to interpret as their species' equivalent of an exasperated sigh. You organics and your feelings. The diagnostic systems show all parameters within normal ranges. The quantum stabilizers are functioning at 98.7% efficiency and— Yeah, I know. Everything's technically fine, Lisa interrupted, squinting at the seemingly abandoned research station slowly rotating against the backdrop of HD 40307G's purple-tinged atmosphere. But haven't you noticed how the station's rotation is just slightly— weird? Weird, Vkr'lak repeated flatly, their crystalline appendages clicking together in what Lisa had come to recognize as their "humans are being illogical again" gesture. The station maintains a rotational velocity of 3.14159 revolutions per standard hour, which is precisely— That's exactly what I mean. Lisa straightened in her chair, jabbing a finger at the display. Since when do research stations rotate at pi revolutions per hour? That's just showing off. The silicon-based life form that had become her closest friend over the past 3 years of exploring abandoned alien artifacts together made a sound like breaking glass. Their version of a laugh. Now you're being paranoid. The Galactic Science Council has very specific guidelines for— Nope, Lisa cut in again, already punching in commands to bring their ship closer. My gut says something's fishy, and you know what happened the last time you ignored my illogical organic instincts. Vkr'lak's crystalline structure briefly shifted to a deeper blue, their equivalent of a blush. That incident with the quantum-locked bathroom on Kepler 186f was a statistical anomaly. An anomaly that nearly got us trapped in a time loop for eternity because someone insisted that out-of-order signs don't require detailed analysis, Lisa replied with a grin. Face it, partner, sometimes human intuition picks up on patterns that even your fancy quantum processors miss. Very well, Vkr'lak conceded, their body chiming softly as they adjusted their position. What would you suggest? Lisa's grin widened. First, we do a detailed scan of that suspiciously perfect rotation. Then we figure out why a supposedly abandoned research station is maintaining such precise movements while allegedly powered down. And then we find out who's trying so hard to make everything look normal that they've wrapped around to making it weird. Your species' ability to find patterns in chaos continues to both impress and disturb me, Vkr'lak observed, already initiating the scanning sequence. Oh, you say the sweetest things. Lisa's fingers flew over the console as she brought them into a closer orbit around the station. Now, let's see what's behind door number— Hello, what's this? The scan results flickered across their screens, showing energy readings that definitely shouldn't exist on an abandoned station. But more interesting than the readings themselves was the way they were being masked, through a series of precisely calculated power fluctuations that, to most scanning systems, would appear as normal background radiation. Well, Vkr'lak chimed, their crystalline form shifting to an intrigued amber hue. It appears your gut feeling may have some merit. These energy signatures are being deliberately obscured through an incredibly sophisticated mathematical sequence. Yeah, and you know who's really good at hiding things using unnecessarily complicated math? Lisa's expression darkened. The calculus pirates. A sharp crystalline ring of surprise emanated from Vkr'lak. The theoretical group of mathematical outlaws that the Galactic Science Council insists doesn't actually exist? The same ones who nearly crashed the entire galactic economy last year by exploiting a rounding error in the universal currency exchange, Lisa confirmed. Looks like they've moved on from financial crimes to whatever this is. Fascinating, Vkr'lak hummed. Though I feel compelled to point out that we have no actual proof of their involvement, and the Council's official position is that the currency fluctuation was caused by a natural quantum phenomenon. Lisa snorted. Right. A natural quantum phenomenon that just happened to transfer exactly 1 Google credits to a series of anonymous accounts. Face it, partner, we've stumbled onto something big here. Perhaps, Vkr'lak conceded. But if you're correct, we should contact the authorities and— Oh no, Lisa interrupted, already reaching for her lucky magnetic boots. By the time we convince anyone that the non-existent pirates are up to something in this supposedly abandoned station, they'll be long gone. We're going in. This is highly inadvisable, Vkr'lak protested, though they were already moving to the equipment locker. The statistical probability of two field researchers successfully intervening in a criminal operation of this magnitude is— Never tell me the odds, Lisa grinned, checking the charge on her particle dispersal gun. Besides, we've got two huge advantages they won't expect. And those would be? 1. They're probably watching for official patrol ships, not a beat-up research vessel. She patted the worn bulkhead affectionately. And 2. No self-respecting pirate would believe that anyone could spot their operation just because their station's rotation felt weird. A fair point, Vkr'lak admitted, their crystalline form shifting into its more compact configuration for EV work. Though I feel compelled to note that this will be the 7th time this year that your intuitive leaps have led us into a potentially life-threatening situation. Hey, we're still alive, aren't we? Lisa checked the seal on her helmet. And we've made some amazing discoveries along the way. True. Though I'm not certain that discovering 3 lost civilizations, an illegal quantum gambling ring, and a coffee shop operating outside of space-time quite justifies the level of danger we regularly— That coffee shop made the best espresso in any dimension and you know it. Lisa cut in, heading for the airlock. Now come on, let's go crash a party that technically doesn't exist. The journey across to the station was surprisingly uneventful, which only made Lisa more suspicious. The airlock they chose cycled normally, the artificial gravity was functioning perfectly, and the interior lighting was set to standard levels. It was all so proper, so regulation perfect, that it practically screamed "nothing to see here" in giant neon letters. See what I mean? Lisa whispered as they moved through the eerily pristine corridors. Nobody maintains an abandoned station this well. The air scrubbers are running at exactly optimal efficiency. The temperature is precisely 294.15 Kelvin. Even the dust particles are evenly distributed. I must admit, Vkr'lak chimed softly, the level of precision is rather unsettling, though I'm still not certain how you initially noticed something was wrong simply from the external rotation. Lisa shrugged. Humans are really good at spotting when things are trying too hard to look normal. It's like, you know that feeling when someone's wearing a fake smile? Same principle, but with math. Your species continues to defy logical analysis, Vkr'lak observed, not unkindly. They were approaching the central hub of the station when they heard it, the unmistakable sound of multiple beings arguing about mathematics. The quaternion sequence has to be perfect, a voice insisted. If we're off by even 1 decimal place, the whole probability matrix could collapse. We've been over this, another voice responded wearily. The sequence is fine. It's the hyperdimensional manifold that needs work. We're getting bleed-through from at least 3 alternate realities. Of course we are, a third voice cut in. That's the whole point. How else are we supposed to calculate the exact moment when— Lisa and Vkr'lak exchanged glances. Well, Lisa glanced. Vkr'lak's crystalline form flickered in a pattern that conveyed the same meaning. Want to bet they're trying to steal something from multiple realities simultaneously? Lisa whispered. That would explain the precise rotational speed, Vkr'lak agreed. They must be using it as a baseline to synchronize probability waves across dimensional boundaries. You know what this means, right? That we should immediately retreat and contact the nearest authorities? Nope, Lisa grinned. It means we get to stop them by introducing a little chaos into their perfect calculations. Before Vkr'lak could protest, Lisa reached for the environmental controls on the wall and did something that no self-respecting mathematician would ever expect. She changed the station's temperature to an irrational number of degrees. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Alarms began blaring as the station's rotation shifted ever so slightly, sending ripples through whatever complex mathematical construct the pirates had been building. What's happening? One of the voices shouted. The probability matrices are destabilizing. The temperature, another voice responded. Someone changed it to— By the sacred equations, they set it to the square root of 2 times Planck temperature. But that's impossible. The environmental systems are locked to maintain perfect rational numbers. Who would even think to— That was when Lisa and Vkr'lak burst into the room, particle dispersal gun and crystalline resonance projector at the ready. Hands, tentacles, or probability manipulators where I can see them, Lisa announced cheerfully. Though I have to say your operation here is pretty impressive. Terrible operational security, but the math is beautiful. The room's occupants, a mix of organic and artificial beings, all wearing matching jackets covered in mathematical symbols, stared in disbelief. How? One of them, a tall being that seemed to be made entirely of living equations, began. How did you even find us? Oh, that's easy, Lisa replied with a grin. Your rotation speed was pi. Nobody actually uses pi as a rotation speed unless they're trying to show off how clever they are. Real abandoned stations have slight imperfections, wear and tear, little wobbles that come from years of use. You made everything too perfect. That's absurd! Another pirate, this one appearing to be a member of a silicon-based species similar to Vkr'lak, protested. Our calculations were flawless. We spent months ensuring that every variable was precisely controlled. And that was exactly the problem, Vkr'lak chimed in, their crystalline form glowing with what Lisa recognized as smugness. You were so focused on mathematical perfection that you forgot about organic imperfection. As my partner often reminds me, sometimes chaos is more revealing than order. Speaking of chaos, Lisa added, you might want to worry less about us and more about what's happening to your probability matrices. Those are some nasty-looking reality fractures starting to form. The pirates turned to their displays in horror, finally noticing the cascading failures spreading through their systems. The slight temperature change had created a snowball effect, introducing just enough uncertainty into their calculations to destabilize the entire operation. No, no, no! The equation being shouted. Quick, we need to re-establish the baseline. If we can just... I wouldn't, Lisa warned. Unless you want to risk collapsing all those alternate realities you've got tethered here. Might want to start thinking about a controlled shutdown instead. The pirates looked at each other, then at their rapidly deteriorating calculations, then back at Lisa and Vkr'lak. This is impossible, one of them muttered. All our plans, undone because some human thought our rotation looked weird? If it helps, Lisa offered, your math really is incredible. You just forgot one of the most important rules of the universe. Nothing is ever perfect, and trying to make it perfect just makes it suspicious. A lesson that I, too, had to learn, Vkr'lak added, their tone sympathetic, though perhaps with less potentially reality-ending consequences. The next few hours were a blur of activity as they supervised the pirates' careful shutdown of their cross-dimensional probability engines, documented everything for the authorities, who were very interested to learn about the officially non-existent pirates, and ensured that no alternate realities were permanently damaged in the process. You know, Lisa remarked later, as they watched the Galactic Science Council's ships arrive to take custody of the pirates and their equipment, I still can't believe they really thought they could hide by making everything too perfect. Indeed, Vkr'lak chimed thoughtfully, though I must admit, I find myself somewhat troubled by the implications. If human intuition can detect sophisticated criminal operations simply by noticing that things appear too orderly. Scary, isn't it? Lisa grinned. Maybe that's why the Council keeps insisting these guys don't exist. They're afraid to admit that sometimes the best detection system isn't a quantum scanner or a probability analyzer. It's just a human going, that feels weird. A disturbing but fascinating possibility, Vkr'lak agreed. Though I feel compelled to ask, what do you plan to put in our official report? I doubt it felt weird will satisfy the Council's documentation requirements. Lisa's grin widened. Oh, that's easy. We'll just explain how we detected subtle anomalies in the station's operational parameters that suggested unauthorized optimization of environmental variables beyond standard maintenance protocols. You're going to bureaucratize your gut feeling. Hey, you have to speak their language, Lisa shrugged. Besides, it's technically true. We did detect anomalies. We just did it with human intuition instead of sensors. Sometimes, Vkr'lak chimed, their crystalline form shifting through amused colors. I wonder if your entire species' greatest achievement is finding ways to make your inexplicable intuitive leaps sound perfectly logical in retrospect. Nah, Lisa replied, already plotting a course to their next destination. Our greatest achievement is knowing when something feels weird enough to be worth investigating. The post hoc rationalization is just a bonus. And with that, they left the station behind, secure in the knowledge that sometimes the best defense against mathematical pirates isn't better equations. It's having the wisdom to recognize when things are trying too hard to add up perfectly. You know, Lisa mused, hanging upside down in a quantum probability field. This could be worse. Vkr'lak's crystalline form vibrated with what could only be described as exasperated disbelief. We are currently suspended in a metastable quantum state between 3 different probability matrices. Our ship is being held hostage by a group of rogue theoretical physicists, and you just had to sneeze in a zero-entropy environment. Please enlighten me as to how this situation could possibly be worse. Well, Lisa replied, watching with interest as her last sneeze caused small ripples in the fabric of reality. They could have taken my coffee maker too. And hey, at least these guys are more reasonable than the calculus pirates. More reasonable? Vkr'lak chimed incredulously.
They're trying to prove the unprovable by using us as quantum observers. Yeah, but they're doing it for science, not profit. That's practically ethical by mad scientist standards. Lisa attempted to shrug, which in their current quantum state caused several nearby possibilities to reorganize themselves. Besides, I think I'm starting to understand their experimental setup, and there's definitely something wrong with it. Other than the fact that they're violating at least 7 fundamental laws of physics and 3 interstellar treaties? No, I mean something feels wrong about their math. It's like, you know that feeling when you've done a long calculation and you know you've made a mistake somewhere, but you can't spot it yet. I continue to be disturbed by your species' ability to sense mathematical errors through what you call vibes, Vkr'lak observed. Though I must admit, your track record with such intuitions is statistically significant. The story continues with Lisa and Vkr'lak having to deal with overzealous quantum physicists who are attempting to prove a famous mathematical conjecture by creating a quantum observation paradox. Through their adventure, Lisa squinted at the shimmering equations floating around them in the probability field. The rogue physicists had covered every available surface, including several that shouldn't technically exist in 3-dimensional space, with their calculations. To most observers, it would look like incomprehensible gibberish, but Lisa had spent enough time around mathematical criminals to spot certain patterns. "Hey!" she called out to their captors, who were huddled around a hyperdimensional whiteboard. "You've got a sign error in your quantum observer equations." One of the physicists, a tall, spindly being whose body seemed to be made entirely of glowing mathematical symbols, turned to face her. "Impossible! Our equations have been checked by the finest minds in theoretical physics." Yeah, well, they didn't have the advantage of looking at them upside down in a probability field, Lisa replied cheerfully. "Trust me, when you carry the imaginary number through the 4th dimension, you forgot to account for the observer effect's own uncertainty principle." "Preposterous!" Another physicist, this one appearing as a shimmering cloud of pure energy, declared. "The uncertainty principle cancels out when—" They stopped suddenly, floating closer to examine the equations from Lisa's perspective. Oh dear. "Lisa," Vkr'lak chimed cautiously, "what exactly happens when there's a sign error in quantum observer equations?" "You know, that's a really good question," Lisa mused. "Theoretically speaking, it means their entire experimental setup has been measuring the inverse of what they thought they were measuring. So instead of proving their conjecture, they've been accidentally disproving it," Vkr'lak finished, their crystalline form shifting to a worried violet hue. "And given the amount of quantum energy they've pumped into the system..." "Yep," Lisa grinned. "I'd say we've got about 5 minutes before this whole probability field collapses in on itself. Less if anyone sneezes again." The physicists erupted into panic, their orderly scientific process dissolving into chaos as they rushed to shut down their equipment. In their hurry, none of them noticed that the quantum probability field holding Lisa and Vkr'lak was beginning to fluctuate. "I assume you have a plan?" Vkr'lak asked, watching as reality began to ripple around them. "Of course. Well, sort of. More of a theory, really." Lisa was still grinning, which Vkr'lak had learned was either very good or very bad news. "See, when their probability field collapses, there's going to be a moment where all possible quantum states exist simultaneously. If we time it right..." "No," Vkr'lak chimed firmly. "Whatever you're thinking, no. The last time you tried to exploit a quantum probability collapse, we ended up having breakfast 3 times in a row on a Tuesday that technically never happened." "That was one time, and you have to admit, those temporal pancakes were amazing." Lisa watched as the equations around them began to blur and shift. "Besides, do you have a better idea?" Before Vkr'lak could respond, one of the physicists accidentally erased part of a crucial equation while trying to correct it, causing a cascade of quantum fluctuations throughout the laboratory. The probability field holding Lisa and Vkr'lak flickered wildly. "Now!" Lisa shouted. "Quick, think about our ship, but also think about coffee, and maybe think a little bit about that really good temporal pancake place." "This is not a scientific approach to quantum." Vkr'lak's protest was cut short as the probability field collapsed completely, sending reality itself into a brief but spectacular confusion about what exactly it was supposed to be doing. When everything settled back into a more or less normal state, Lisa and Vkr'lak found themselves safely back on their ship. The coffee maker was intact, And somehow, impossibly, there was a plate of temporal pancakes sitting on the navigation console.
See? Lisa said triumphantly. Told you it would work. I don't...
Vkr'lak's crystalline form cycled through several colors of disbelief. How did you know that would work? Oh, I didn't, Lisa admitted cheerfully, already reaching for the pancakes. But I figured when reality got confused about which possibility was supposed to be real, it would probably default to whatever felt most normal. And since we spend so much time on this ship, and I think about coffee basically constantly, you exploited quantum probability collapse by using human nostalgia as an anchor point, Vkr'lak stated flatly.
That shouldn't be possible. That can't be possible. The mathematical principles involved in... They were interrupted by a transmission from the Galactic Science Council. Attention unidentified vessel. We've detected severe quantum abnormalities in your vicinity. Please stand by for inspection.
Whoops, Lisa said through a mouthful of temporal pancake. Think we should tell them about the rogue physicists? Considering that their failed experiment probably registered on every quantum sensor in the sector, I believe they'll figure that out on their own, Vkr'lak replied. Though I am curious about one thing. Just one? Why did you feel it necessary to mention their sign error? We could have simply waited for them to discover it on their own. Lisa shrugged. Bad? The lead inspector, a being composed of pure logic matrices named Array, flickered in agitation.
You've created a localized temporal anomaly in your ship's break room. There are pastries violating causality. Your coffee maker is brewing beverages that exist in 3 different quantum states simultaneously. To be fair, Vkr'lak chimed in, their crystalline form maintaining what they hoped was a professional hue. The coffee maker was like that before all this started. Array's logical matrices rearranged themselves into what Lisa had learned to recognize as their equivalent of a disapproving frown.
That does not help your case. In fact, it raises several additional concerns about... They were interrupted by a sudden burst of temporal static from the plate of pancakes, which briefly flickered through several different states of being eaten before settling back into what appeared to be Schrödinger's breakfast, simultaneously consumed and yet still perfectly whole.
See, this is actually a good thing, Lisa said quickly.
We've basically created a controlled environment for studying quantum uncertainty in everyday objects. Think about the research possibilities. Research possibilities? Array's voice took on the particular tone that bureaucrats across the galaxy used when dealing with what they considered dangerous innovators. You've turned your ship's break room into a pocket universe where the arrow of time has become a recursive loop. Yeah, but the coffee's amazing, Lisa muttered under her breath, then louder. Look, I've seen this kind of temporal instability before. It's not as bad as it looks. We just need to... She was cut off by the coffee maker, which chose that moment to start brewing a cup of coffee that, according to the quantum analyzers, had already been drunk yesterday and wouldn't actually exist until next Tuesday. You know what? Array said, their logical matrices adopting a distinctly frazzled pattern. I'm calling in the Temporal Regularization Division. This is way above my pay grade. Oh no, not the TRD, Lisa groaned. Those guys have no sense of humor about causality violations. Perhaps, Vkr'lak suggested diplomatically. We should focus on containing the temporal anomalies before they spread beyond the break room. Too late, Array said, consulting their quantum scanner. We're detecting chronological inconsistencies spreading through your ship's corridors. At this rate, your entire vessel will be temporally desynchronized within the hour. Huh. Lisa mused, watching as a cup of coffee on the counter aged 3 weeks in an instant, then reversed back to freshly brewed. That's actually kind of impressive. Also, I think I know what's causing it. Both Array and Vkr'lak turned to look at her. Array with skepticism, Vkr'lak with their particular brand of resigned anticipation. The quantum probability field collapse didn't just bring us back to our ship, Lisa explained, grabbing a temporal pancake and using it to gesture as she talked. It created a sort of temporal echo, like when you hear a sound bouncing off different surfaces, except it's probability waves bouncing off different moments in time. That's not how quantum mechanics works, Array protested weakly. Tell that to the coffee maker, Lisa replied, taking a bite of her pancake. The point is, I've seen something similar before. Remember that time loop incident in the quantum-locked bathroom, Vkr'lak? I thought we agreed never to speak of that again. Yeah, but it's relevant. See, when you get multiple quantum states trying to resolve themselves in an enclosed space, they start to, well, let's call it temporal feedback. Each probability wave affects the others, creating a cascading effect that... She was interrupted by the arrival of another council ship, this one bearing the distinctive fractal patterns of the Temporal Regularization Division.
Oh great, Lisa sighed.
Here come the fun police. The TRD team that boarded their ship was exactly what Lisa expected. A group of beings so thoroughly invested in maintaining proper chronological order that they made Array look positively chaotic in comparison. Their leader, a multidimensional entity that called itself Protocol, took one look at the break room and immediately began reciting violations of temporal law. Section 47.3, Unauthorized Manipulation of Chronological Flow. Section 112.9, Creation of Recursive Temporal Loops in a Civilian Vessel. Section 259.1, Preparation of Food Items with Uncertain Quantum States. Section... Yes, Lisa interrupted. We're breaking all sorts of rules. But don't you want to know how we're breaking them? I mean, this is pretty unprecedented stuff here. Protocol paused mid-recitation, their multidimensional form wavering slightly. Explain.
Well, you've probably never seen temporal feedback quite like this before, right? The way the probability waves are interacting with normal space-time is completely new. And look at how stable the quantum uncertainty is. These pancakes have been simultaneously eaten and not eaten for almost an hour now.
She's doing it again.
Krexthak chimed quietly to Array. Array whispered back, converting a potential disaster into a research opportunity through sheer force of enthusiasm and questionable scientific reasoning. To everyone's surprise, Protocol actually seemed interested. Their form shifted through several dimensional states as they examined the temporal anomalies more closely. The quantum coherence is remarkably stable, they admitted, and the way the probability waves are maintaining multiple temporal states without collapsing. It's quite extraordinary.
Right? Lisa grinned. And watch this. She reached for the coffee maker, which obligingly produced a cup of coffee that, according to the quantum analyzers, was simultaneously the best and worst cup of coffee ever made in any timeline.
Fascinating, Protocol murmured, their violation citations temporarily forgotten. The implications for quantum mechanics research are... Exactly. Lisa's grin widened.
So instead of shutting all this down, what if we turned my ship into an official temporal research station? We've already got all these amazing quantum effects stabilized, and think about how much we could learn about the nature of time itself, to be continued.